Actually, I don't have a topic for the talk this morning. It's not a retreat with all the questions to be discussed. And last night, before trying to go to sleep, I realized I had no topic for the talk. A few of us had been in Dansville, in the Dansville library, to see 3 comedy acts. Very well done. I laughed so hard that I was so awake, lively, energetic, that it was, sleep didn't come. The whole body was stimulated from all this laughter. And then thinking of what am I going to talk about is more stimulation, which is amazing to watch how one thought can get the heart going. Why does the heart go at the thought, what am I going to talk about? It pounds a bit faster, and other physical accompaniments. Is it that the heart knows that if there is a plan of doing something, it needs to provide more whatever, oxygen, strength? Even if I'm lying in bed at the time. You can watch it, maybe you have watched it. A thought of what should be done, the snow shoveled or a letter written, and the heart gets going. The body seems to get into shape to do it. So it's good if it's possible not to think of what one is going to do when one wants to go to sleep. But we have no control over that. There seem to be certain movements toward trying to solve something or anticipate something, prepare something. And the body reacts to these thoughts. It's a total movement. So then suddenly something occurred to me that I could talk about. And things slowed down. I did go to sleep. This morning I had forgotten what it was. And it hasn't come back. It's gone. Which is also interesting. Why do some things stay to be remembered and others just come and go like clouds? Not really deeply recorded, held on to. So then thinking some more this morning during the sitting, but what to talk about? I realized that maybe it's more important where we're coming from in our talking and listening. What the state of talking, listening is, than what the topic is. Does that make sense? That the real important thing is the openness, the unhinderedness, the non-judgmentalness of the mind in the one who's talking and listening, which is not a separate thing. Because if there's not listening in the talking, this open, non-judgmental awareness, witness, the talk will be very limited and will not resonate in the listener with that deeper state of openness where the cawing has not more or less importance than the spoken word or a reaction that may come up in the listener or in the speaker. It is all of one open listening space. And if for the next hour or hour and a half, because we will also have some questions after a brief talk, if during this time on a Sunday morning, all of us, to one degree or another, at one time or another, can partake of this open, non-judgmental, listening space. Be part of it. Be of it. Participate in it. Then maybe it doesn't matter so much what it was that we were talking about. I'm putting it out. I haven't tested this out yet. We're throwing it out to look at. And each one of you who wishes to participate by talking, one can also participate without talking later on. Anyone who wishes to say something can pick it up, or something else. Whether the really essential thing of being alive is this touching, contacting, or being of this open listening space in which the cawing of the crow or the dripping of melting snow, the beating of the heart, the breathing, whatever kind of breathing, doesn't matter, slow, fast, deep, shallow, breathing, and the participation of the whole body in breathing. Whether all of these different things that can be felt, seen, heard, and talked about are of any more importance, greater importance, than the openness in which they take place, which they constitute. We can call it awareness, we can call it attention, all kinds of words have been given to it, and the danger with words which are repeated, particularly by a person who gives hundreds of talks over the years, maybe ranging into the thousands. One says the vocabulary is limited, no matter how creative a vocabulary one may have. So words are repeated, awareness, attention. And then they become a concept rather than this open listening right now. And that's the important thing, not the word that we use to describe it, over which we can argue and debate endlessly. So, is there for moments at a time, doesn't matter, time doesn't matter, duration doesn't matter, and in touch with breathing and dripping, cawing and beating. The aliveness of the air, alive with sound, with warmth or coolth. And this sensing body, not a part of it, not apart from it, but a part of it, not separate from it. And to also become aware of before, during, or after, that the moment a certain complex circuit is entered, the circuit of me. Am I doing it right? Do I have it? Am I doing it as well as my neighbor or the one who's talking? As soon as that circuit is tapped or is entered, the energy enters into the me evaluating circuit, the me comparing circuit, the me affirming circuit, the me fearing circuit, the me apprehension, the me paining circuit. Can one notice the narrowing of the field? From a moment of open dripping and cawing and breathing here and there and everywhere, to, am I doing it right? I'll never get it, or I got it. And the body accompanying those thoughts, but it's a different field from no worry about oneself, no denying of oneself either. It's just the circuit is dormant, is not tapped, is not activated in this dripping, listening, breathing, sniffing and moving, sensing. When it's there, not to bemoan it. Oh my God, now I'm in this again. It's part of that circuit. Just to hear it, like the drips and the wind and the crows and the breathing, is that narrow circuit of how am I doing? Am I doing well? Am I failing? Or I am failing? All of that. Learned, conditioned thinking, feeling, which is the main occupation of a human lifetime. It has a past, this main occupation of the human lifetime, the occupation with the me images, the me memories, the me wants and fears and comparisons and constant judgments and aspirations and desires and fears. That has an infinite past to it. Not just the past of our personal life, which all kinds of things that we may have completely forgotten happened in uterus, out of uterus, and at the time of birth, as a small child, baby, toddler, teenager, the hurts, the intimidations, the humiliations, the pleasures. The repressions, the closings off, encapsulating too painful experiences, too painful to be contacted by memory, capsuling it off, but yet the capsule does its own passive, active work in limiting our perceptions, our actions now. Stuck memories, stuck experiences which are capsuled off, nonetheless affect the organism. It cannot, the energy cannot move completely, freely, openly. And so many people mention to me and to others, to each other, I've got to get after those capsuled off experiences which seem to give me trouble, things I can't feel, things I can't do, things I'm afraid of, that hamper me, that block me, that make me angry or resentful or moping or moody. negative. I got to get at that. And I have found, so some people say, I found that just sitting or going to retreat and being attentive doesn't do the whole thing. It doesn't get at those capsules, those blockages, those forgotten and defended, shielded hurts, which give me trouble. I can tell it in relationship, at work, and so forth. Got to find a different way of getting at this, because attention, sometimes people say attention doesn't do it. Awareness isn't the whole thing. Something else has to happen to bring out the hidden, the unseen. We've actually discussed this quite frequently over the past months in staff meetings or small Sunday discussions. It is true that in sitting quietly, maybe over a longer period of time, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, even though a lot of stuff may come up from the past, and this does happen to many people, totally forgotten scenarios from a childhood scene, childhood experience will bubble up with great intensity, triggering emotion, crying, and a release coming with that, a momentary release. But something else also happens in quiet sitting and quietly sitting with other quiet sitters. There is a possibility and sometimes an actuality of touching that vast, open, undivided listening space in which the me circuit is in abeyance. It is not tapped. It's not energized. It lies there without electricity, power failure. It isn't in action. The electricity or the energy runs without that, and runs so much better, to make a brief judgment here. Better meaning unimpeded, open, not worrying, the rightness, the just so-ness of everything. The absence of conflict. Because the me isn't there to bring itself into the thing to create conflict or approval. All of that is quiet for a moment or for a sustained period of time. So that happens, and happens usually, probably most frequently, in quiet time, prolonged quiet time. Even though people have also come upon this in their daily life, which had no retreat going at all. So we can never claim only absentia doesn't happen there. This is all nonsensical, trying to theorize. But at such a time of open dripping, open cawing and heartbeat breathing, there are no encapsulated past experiences to be contacted. They are that whole complex field of conditioned wiring is not in operation, with its whole subconscious and unconscious mind. I'm throwing it out. Maybe someone will discuss it or debate it later on. Doesn't seem to be in operation. So there's nothing that needs to be brought to light for such a state right now, because everything is out in the open. The movement of a person, the hitting of a wooden roof by rain, the movement of air, breathing, the sensing of the body, the being with each other, other bodies. What's hidden? What needs to be brought out of the cellar? There is no cellar right now. Which does not mean that stepping into a situation which immediately triggers that complex field of meanness and pastness, all my past memories, and that of my parents and my great-great-grandparents and their relatives, their particular cultural conditioning, racial, ethnic, religious conditioning, all of that can be instantly enlivened, triggered, brought into operation. And in that field there are all kinds of denied and repressed past experiences. Too hard to feel the pain at the time. Usually that happens in childhood. It happens so automatically. But it can happen later on too. One just wonders the immense, awesome, monstrous quantity of repression that must be taking place right now in children of this whole world, going through unimaginable horror. I think I went through horror in my World War II experience. It compares in no way to comparing through what I see over the news, is suffered and gone through and experienced by children in all these countries where there is civil war, terrorism. Of course, in this country, the underprivileged areas of living, the ghettos, the traumatization of the human mind. If enough shots have been heard, enough people have been killed, enough blood has flown, maybe one's own, maiming, destruction, detonation, I wonder whether that mind can ever come to a peaceful, opening, quiet, listening space, or whether the need to protect and to defend and to ward off is so strong, so overridingly overpowering, that this other is in abeyance, is kept away. One wonders about this. So the question here being, living here in this unspeakably fortunate realm of beautiful country, quiet place, enough good food, no threat, no mortar shells, no refugees pounding on one's doors, streams and streams. Some detonation. What just came to mind right now is countries like Germany. That comes to mind. There are others where thousands of refugees pressing upon the borders or coming into the country, looking for asylum, for care. Actually, for minimum sustenance and encountering hostility. And for whatever reason, which is not comprehensible to the mind, we live here free of all of that. Because we have our own little problems, which all human beings have if they live together. The mind is a problem creator. And yet living here with the utter luxury of being able to listen to the rain with a full belly, place to sleep, food to eat, clothes to buy, friends to visit, no fear of an air raid. Yet problems we have in that circuit that we have referred to several times now, the circuit in which the idea and sense of me commands the center. It's the central command. My problems, my past, my pains, my fears, my repressions, my inaccessible past, my blockages, my disturbances, my moods. So, question that has been brought up, is attention enough to get at what is hidden, removed? And I don't want to live with hidden chambers, which are, as we said earlier, they're not totally gone. They're actively passive or passively active, distorting or impinging on our relationship with each other. How can I get at them? Because in the last retreat it was nice and peaceful, attention and so forth. But here it is. Here I'm back in problems with my supervisor, my wife, husband, or somebody who talks rudely to me, and I'm getting all uptight and angry and maybe lash out. And I'm wondering whether this attention of past retreats or of early morning quiet sitting has any relevance or is enough. Well, certainly the attention this moment now is not going to do anything tomorrow. This moment is just this moment. Caw, 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 caw. Breathing and raining. And the openness of being part of the whole thing. That's now. It's now. It's only now. So what tomorrow? Somebody speaking to me rudely, in a humiliating way, or in a way that I experience as rudely and humiliating. Let's rather put it that way, because it may turn out that the problem lies in how it is being heard, received, and reacted to here, now, in this organism, with its accumulated past. So to me personally, it doesn't matter what anyone may do, what people or situations anybody may seek out or find, because if we seek things, we do usually find them, to get at what is hidden, dark, disturbing, upsetting, and felt to be unnecessarily so, to try to get at it. Whatever method or situation one may seek out or find. But one thing is clear to me beyond any doubt. whatsoever. That unless there is this impartial, open, undivided attention and nowness and listening space, nothing will change. Nothing essential will take place. And what is the essential to take place in the midst of a situation where something hidden comes to light? Suddenly a terrorizing, humiliating scene is vivid and one cries out, sobs uncontrollably, or whatever the situation may be that comes to light, reveals itself. Is it seen completely? Meaning, this body-mind has opened up non-defensively, non-protectively, and non-preservingly. It's not trying to preserve anything. It's just what's there. The sensation of the emotions, whatever the body manifests, the screaming, crying, twitching, paining, or releasing. But is there more than that? More meaning it's nothing special. It's the rain, the birds, the breath, the beating of the heart, and this whole organism tuned in, not only to itself, but to everything. Without needing to worry about its own continuity. Can that happen in the midst of our daily life? Which I mean not just in a time set aside for quiet listening, but in the midst of uproar, anxiety, contention, anger. A moment of stopping, looking and listening quietly to what's there. Not trying to shape it, not trying to change it, not trying to own it or disown it, just what's there. Let's listen. We have 50 minutes, about 50 minutes, for people to say something, ask something, talk to me, to each other.
One question came up a few days ago. Something came up in my mind and looked at it kind of intensely with attention. It disappeared. And I just wondering more. And it made me wonder if at times something comes up and, maybe I'm good at this art of sitting with or cutting off things. It made me wonder if am I intensely looking at it and it disappeared, or I'm inside, I'm kind of sly in some way, and I cut it off and maybe didn't look at something that, look at it fully, think about it, not only feel it and be with it, but think about it and work it through. Because it seems like different things come to the mind, and not just look at and, cut it off, but there may be something that the mind needs to be, the mental, the cognitive part of you need to kind of work it through, talk it out, things like that. So that's just a question that comes to mind. It reminded me of, what do I call it? Some old masters call it dead sitting or something. When you're good at just clearing the mind, and not really doing, work there. So I'm not clear, when I'm looking at things, whether I'm doing that or I'm really carefully looking at something, and it just, when I did that, it cuts off, it's not there anymore. Do you have a sense of what my question is?
Yes. Yes. And it happens that when something goes on in the mind and the thinking, worrying circuit gives way to a looking and attending circuit, well, there's either one or the other. When there's really attention, the other fades. That happens. Now your question is, have I sort of cheated? Not looked at something more thoroughly? Well, it really should have been looked at and explained to myself or each other cognitively what has been going on between us. Is that what should have happened? But you see, if it's not just sort of a blocking out thing, sort of like you call it, dead sitting, using an awareness practice, which usually has some kind of a focus, some kind of a willpower behind it, effort, and with the effort of being attentive, clearing the mind, thinking of my breathing, or looking at my breathing, using that to squeeze out the thought that just came up, the worrisome thought, the upsetting thought. Why can't the content of the worrisome thought be seen at a glance? Seen at a glance what it is that one was worried about or upset over. If that's not seen at a glance, then it may be more this repressive movement that you're describing, using concentration on breathing to not be confronted with worrisome thoughts. But if there's a moment of what we call stopping, looking and listening, the thought that came up, or the whole thought complex, can be seen. The content of it can be apprehended. This is what was going on and why. Why am I so worried about this? And ask another question. Not say, oh, it's because of this and this and this, but why this worry, this anxiety about this, and allow more stuff to come up, if it will. But if you don't see what it is you've been thinking about because you've cut it off with a meditation practice, then you can't ask any further questions. You're even afraid of that because it may drag you into some pool of distraction. Maybe that thought there, that conditioning. There was a man who came to see me during the past week, and he said, he was here for the first time. He said, I'm very interested what you're doing here, and I've read lots of Krishnamurti books and Alan Watts books. And he was very, very, had read a lot, and is very interested in this whole thing of living and paying attention, and has had some experiences of just being there without problem. He says, right now I'm in the midst of a business venture which is experimental, trying to install some new thing in a company, a new installation. And even though my business is going well, I'm successful, I'm good at it, and so are the people with whom I work, all week long I have tremendous anxiety about this venture. And so finally I sat down and said, why am I so afraid of this? What could really happen? And then all the different scenarios of what could happen sort of paraded through his mind. It'll go wrong. They will reject it. I will have to bring my people there and to dismantle this whole thing, the humiliation to our pride. We'll lose money over it. But then he said, thinking of the worst thing that could happen, none of it was really so bad, considering that there's much more in life than just a business venture. That there was sort of this openness to the whole. But he said, still, I saw that it isn't that bad. Even if the worst thing happens, it's not that bad. But he says, the mind keeps returning to the prospect of this thing going wrong. Why? That's a good question. So keep watching it. And the mind does that. Thought does it. It's sort of, there's like a scanner around here looking for some weak spots or some dangerous things, something that may happen. And there is always something that can happen. And it zooms in and then starts creating specters. And to just begin to watch that. Not just say it shouldn't happen, I should be beyond this, or I have seen the light, why should it happen again? But be interested in the fact that it does happen and watch it some more. And maybe on a subtler and subtler level. Remaining without answer to why the mind seeks out anxiety-producing specters or pleasure-producing specters. And not a why in our conventional sense of giving an answer, but urging more observation.
Because I remember I was looking at this thing, I was looking at openly at what it looked like. I was looking at the clenched teeth. Oh, you don't get over my mind, it's just...
Getting out of my mind.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
Oh.
I wasn't watching my clenched teeth, you try to get something, just not thinking about something. It was just a light, gently looking at something and looking at it carefully, and just disappeared. Just didn't have energy or whatever.
So then, what's wrong with its disappearing if it's been looked at gently, not
Yeah.
So it disappears in the rain.
Yeah, if it keeps on coming back, that kind of tells you something that there's something that's it's something inside is telling you it needs to be looked at.
I'm not so sure. I think if it keeps coming back, it's because the brain constantly looks for trouble, for something that could go wrong. This is sort of a, by now, misguided sense of protecting us, looking for all the possible things that could go wrong. or that could give me pleasure. It does, please, we can discuss it. It does not necessarily mean that something is not resolved, because some things are irresolvable. We all die. You can't just say, I got to resolve this thing of dying, except that you're not afraid of it, but you can't resolve the fact that you die. You will. And the fear of that will mean you're thinking of dangerous things and try to figure out how you can protect yourself against them.
But you're coming back and forth. I mean, the mind's not telling you that it needs to be looked at carefully.
Well, then look at it carefully.
But is that a theory that you have, that if something happens over and over again, then that means something has to happen? That's a thought that arises, which, as a thought that arises, probably comes from the past and is as determined by our past as the little thoughts that keep arising. And so it's a theory that comes up that something has to happen because this thought keeps happening. That's another idea. Can we wonder about that idea?
And by wondering, you mean questioning its truth.
Yes.
We assume it's true.
Yeah.
Because it's come up, there must be something there. Because it's always coming up, and question the underlying assumption.
As long as you are looking at something very intensely, like you mentioned, like very intensely, you keep looking and looking and looking. That looking to me is doing also. It's not something that you look and then you do it. In the beginning, I used to understand that observe it, and then I had something that you observe, and then something comes to you as a solution or something. But now I understand, I don't know right or wrong, but it's just looking and looking and looking and looking. The moment you deviate from looking, that problem is there. But the looking and looking. But the looking and looking is not different from solving or doing. It's a simultaneous process, I think.
By looking, you mean not just, I gotta find something, but the
Yeah.
openness of looking.
Yeah, opening like you define
Yes.
space.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, that has
And
its
sometimes
own.
I think that looking is the only thing you can do, but we don't know. So we said there is something that I can do, and that's why I have this conflict. I think that looking is the only thing that the humanity can do on psychic kind of problems.
Whereas looking at it is facing it as it's a fact. It is as it is.
You brought something interesting. If I was born in Germany, in India, I was of course born, but if I was there, Middle East, where there's a lot of turmoil going on, Bosnia, all the parts of it, and knowing what I know now, the way that I should live and all that, would I really be living there in the same way that I'm living here? Like you mentioned here, it's a beautiful country, the peace around me, no starvation, no nothing. Now is this something that I've understood that will allow me to live there just like I'm here? Or is it because I happen to be here, so how everything is so nice, and that's the reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
How
Would that have made you wise if you went back there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, you can try it out. If it's an important problem, but I've wondered too how. But there are amazingly people who put themselves into these situations and work there, and all of these aid stations. It's incredible what some people, quite unbeknownst to the world, will do, because that's what they need to do. What the state of mind is, I don't know. Is it some idealistic calling, serving their God, their ideal, and hoping for rewards that way, or I don't know. I mentioned once here that having seen in the early, just before the American troops in Somalia got to the more difficult inner station, there was a reporter there who took a picture of a doctor who had been there for weeks and months just taking care of shelled babies and children. Adults too, I was not a specialist, but that's what mostly came in. And Dan Rather was there interviewing her, and she had this little baby which had a head wound and a body wound. She'd already bandaged the head, and she said, just hold this baby for a moment, I gotta get something. And here he was holding this little baby and started sort of to massage the foot a little bit, and she came back, she said, well, you seem to understand something about children. But then she said, now see, this baby is probably not going to live more than 4 weeks, but right now it's doing all right. She had a certain cheer about herself, not a cynicism. She was working on this little baby that was probably going to die within a month, but she wasn't quite sure either. And here she's doing this. It's amazing. And you could hear over the sound system the shelling. So how? But see, I don't know. If you constantly think, and I'm not saying you're doing this, I should really be there, help, and feel guilty that you're here, then you're not here at all. And is that what is the essential thing for human beings, wherever they are, to be here? And to see how difficult it is, almost sometimes seemingly impossible to be in this beautiful environment and to be here. No, you want to be someplace else. Not you want to be, but this is the specter that the video up here prepares, and then the longing to be in a better situation, which means not simply here. And who knows, I don't know, there's sometimes a very deep feeling that to the extent that any of us at any place is here, we're sort of helping each other in that here-ness. There's not a rationalization. I have a feeling for that. That here-ness of the human mind coalesces, is then together wherever here-ness happens. It's in this little miserable hospital in Somalia, or in wherever all the horrors happen.
What is it about the here-ness that touches me?
Can you say it?
Can I say it?
Yeah?
Joy.
Joy. The Buddhists use the word our true state. Is our true state. Mm-hmm. And for a long time I just sort of rejected this kind of verbiage, because you can make an ideal again that I want the true state and this is the wrong state. But there's something to it. Openness without judgment and division is truth. This is so. And there's a joy in it. Yes. A joy meaning the aliveness of here-ness. Because it's the absence of division and conflict. And does that, so, see, they tell us even in physics that there is no space between two electrons, even if they're trillions of light years away. They're in touch. So space doesn't matter. This is what I read in popularized science. By great people. I'm not shocked. But it again rings a bell. And there's this question, is the here-ness of people here and there, it has no space between it, and it is a different, healthy, true consciousness. say emerging or being touched, contact, being brought to life. The words are always difficult.
People have told me, oh, you work in a job dealing with people's problems and things like that, and that must be depressing. But at the times working with people in different ways, that is not depressing. It's just, it's energy there. It's, people working on things, ebb and flow of life or something, however you put it. And it's like, at times that kind of thought or feeling's not there. It's just, we're working on something together. There's some kind of energy. Some weeks ago, I was at the hospital, and this guy was dying, and I was right there, trying to be there with him, and talking to him about something. He was kind of resistant to, he wanted to go home, and nursing service wouldn't go out there to his home with him because he didn't have backup. So I tried to encourage him that he need to stay in a hospital for a while until you, I could still get stiffen up, and then I just soften when I talked to him and spoke to him gentler, and he seemed to relax more. At the time I was talking with him, I wasn't down or anything. It was just in touch there with something of a human being or something. And kind of alertness there. And, I don't know, I can see where people can just focus in on what needs to be done and, not thinking about things, just working on it, just being there.
Toni, you told a story one time, I think you saw this on television, Sarajevo or someone reminds me about a young girl who had lost her parents. And somehow that seems relevant to me, and this keeps coming up for me, is that story that you told about how calm and at peace she was in the midst of all this.
Yeah, it was incredible. She had temporarily lost, and they were still both alive, it turned out.
Mm-hmm.
She had found her mother the mother swam across a lake and found her, but her father was in a detention camp. And one time they were even, due to really the good offices of the media, were able to talk with each other. But certainly the parents were much more disheveled and distraught than this young woman. She was a child. I had forgotten about that, 8 years old or so. A beautiful face, almost amazing. Yeah. And also, so she said, everything will work out. There was a certain optimism there, which didn't have any particular basis in fact, except it came out of her. Why did you bring it up? Just
it just
a case
seemed
of
somehow it was a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
There's something that goes deeper than this ever-changing phenomenon.
Yeah. It was a complete absence of hatred. That was in her face. Or resentment over her fate, that was absent.
When you were talking about these things that happen in the world, I had a reaction of tears came to my eyes, and after that, I came in today in a state of some turmoil, and after that, I felt a softening, and that turmoil went away. But there was a comparison there, in some way, afterwards. I was looking at very difficult situations, and then seeing the calm and the beauty of here. question came up with perspective. But then I started judging that question about, do I have to see something worse than I have in order to get this? And I started judging that question.
See, all kinds of stuff comes up, judgments, assumptions. But like Dave said, why not see all of that? That's what, and see what it does.
Yeah.
Thought cannot run when you say you're with this man and you feel you're helping him or so. Don't thoughts come up, oh, I'm pretty good right now. And then you can be down on that and the whole openness is gone, because first you think you're good and then you're down and you're thinking you're good. Why not just see this as the play of all of these thoughts and not get so entangled judgmentally? It's not easy, because our conditioning is to get entangled in judgment. But any moment it can open up and there can be some light coming in our space, listening to, I'm good, you shouldn't think you're good, and all this kind of stuff, and just maybe laughing about it a little bit.
you talked about that space that we experience in silence and sitting, as we probably experience it right now. And but there are times when things trouble you, and you've experienced that at times. But when things trouble you, and you long for that space, and it seems so difficult at that time to allow yourself to be still. Why is it so difficult? What are we doing or not doing that's not allowing that space to come in?
We have to find out what it is. The question now has been raised. Troubling things come up. One longs for the quiet space. What is it that keeps us from it? Why don't we allow ourselves that quiet space and rather stay with the trouble? That the question is now formulated. You've put it to yourself. And maybe all of us have that question. Now it's a matter of not just, I can give all kinds of answers for this. It's because of this, it's because of that, and maybe because of this. But you can watch it when it happens. Something troubling comes up. Well, for one thing, at this moment, you probably don't think at all about the quiet space. You want to get your way or escape. Whatever. Insist in your suffering. Insist in your pain. You want to have it acknowledged. You want to continue feeling sorry for yourself. So what can happen so there isn't a total caught-upness in these ancient modern movements of the mind and body? I've found the most helpful thing is to listen to the commentator, the editor in the mind, who constantly reports about what is happening, usually in loaded language. He always gets his way, he won't let me have my way, or why do I always have to give in? And you may find by observing and listening, tuning into that you react much more to the editorial than to what has actually happened. It's now a shift into the representation in your mind of what has happened. And to that, you become emotionally reactive, or attached. And sometimes it's interesting. If you become aware of it, either the story can end instantly because you see the absurdity of it to keep making a story about what happens and reacting to that, whereas the other thing is already over. Or else, you want to go on with that story. It has a tremendous power, momentum to it. You want to feel sorry for yourself. You want the other people to appear in a negative light, or you want yourself to appear in a negative light, or you want to continue being the suffering victim. And you can just say, why? Why? How amazing. Why? And if you really ask why, and don't just say, shut up, questioner, I want to go on with this. If you really are interested, then it's already a shift taking place. Like you said, when you start looking, things change. Because the story is interrupted. And maybe more comes to light again what actually happened. And we can deal much better with that. Either we can do something about it or we can't do anything about it. But the story is endless. It'll be spinning out new chapters all the time. New pictures, new maps. But you have to come upon that. It's an enormously significant discovery to begin hearing the headlines. How you put an event into words and then respond to that. And how loaded the words are which we use. We do this too when we talk about other people, very often, or each other. not use quite accurate language, and then react to our implications, the loaded terms. It's so subtle, but it's discoverable. And because it's discoverable, it's remedial. I mean, you can remedy it by just not going on with it. It sometimes is an incredible relief to come back to the airplane rather than keep on with the story. So you can ask yourself, am I talking to myself about this? Of course, let's be careful. Somebody brought up, you brought up, it's sometimes helpful to put something into cognitive terms, to put something to ourselves intelligently so we can comprehend it better intellectually.
Kind of work it through emotionally
and intellectually. But what's the
holistic.
language? What words are you putting it in? I don't know, when I studied sociology or social psychology at school, one part of one course was just to study newspaper language and our own language, just to highlight loaded terms which do more than accurately describe what's going on. And then the whole thing is no longer an accurate representation, but an incendiary stuff. And at times we love to incense ourselves, to feel alive when we're angry. One person has told me that repeatedly. I feel most alive when I'm either afraid or angry, else I feel so numb. So a person may not want to do this right now, but feel anger in order to feel alive. The other thing we may observe is that a lot of ways in which we put things are very habitual. We don't even notice, and we don't intend to do it. It just happens. Maybe it's the way our parents talked, or people that we think a lot about, our teachers, or past priests, ministers, or whatever. We have an automaticness of language that is autonomous to it. Doesn't come out of looking and trying to put something into words, but it runs. And to begin to question that, whether one can hear how one is talking. Not immediately in order to change it. It does change when the listening space deepens and widens, but it's just to hear how we're talking. And I heard this recently. We heard a tape of the man is a Catholic priest. His name is Father Di Mello, and he's talking on a seminar to people. He has read and studied a lot of Merton and Krishnamurti, and he's a lot of what he talks is just like we talk here. He's much more blunt in many respects, and you wonder how he could be a Catholic priest doing this, and he's dead now, he's not alive anymore. And he, one of his pastoral functions used to be, maybe still is, to be a psychotherapist to his congregation, or to people who want psychotherapy. And when he took this course, they were taping whatever they were saying, and then the tape was played back. But before his tape, in which he was counseling somebody, before that tape was played back, his teacher told him something that he said and that was really not appropriate to do in a counseling situation. He said, "I didn't say that, I would never say that. It wouldn't occur to me to say something like this." Well, then the tape was played back to him, and lo and behold, he couldn't believe what he had said. He had meant to talk differently, and yet something blurted out. And that happens to us, to all of us. And it's an amazing feat to sort of bring together what we want to say and what we're actually saying, and to hear it. And how we're saying it, not judgmentally, not in order to immediately be down on ourselves, but to find out something that's truthful, that's so, that's happening actually.
It's just intellectual, that's a problem. Or the words we use. But I guess use an example of, let's say, having a difficulty in a relationship. You have the gut level feelings that come up, and and then also I'm thinking about what you did, what was said, what was done, and somehow in working, even talking about it, looking at something. Somehow the emotions and your mental work, whatever you're doing mentally, somehow it can come together in some way, and sometimes insights come out of that that put like a whole, they put a lot of different things together. It almost puts the feelings and the emotions together in some way. So when I guess I was talking about doing the intellectual work of it, just by itself, but having that part of the process.
Someone else would like to say something?
Well, I can give it a stab, just because you talked about people who want to get into the dark basements, and get at these sort of encapsulated experiences, and how they think that just sitting might not be enough, that there must be other techniques to get at these things. I'm sort of somewhere in between someone who says you don't need any of that and someone who says, yeah, that's all that will help you. I agree with you when you say, if you don't see what's going on with this openness, nothing will change. I mean, you can explain it to yourself, but if you're not really open to what you're saying, it's not going to have an impact on your life. But, this is, I'm sort of, I'm ad-libbing this, so I don't know if it's going to be as coherent as I wish. But you come from, hopefully, an open space. You have maybe a baseline of openness, but then and the me circuits are deactivated. Then you walk into a situation and the circuits get activated, and all of a sudden you're feeling these emotions, whatever they might be, anger, frustration. Okay, so you see it. You see the frustration, you see the anger, and maybe you'll leave. And then hopefully you can get back into a space of openness, or you saw it as openness. And this happens again, you go into the same kind of situation, or another situation, the same thing happens. For me, and I'm only speaking my experience, just seeing that frustration, whatever comes up, that uneasiness, irritation, very seldom will do it for me. You know what I'm saying? I very seldom can drop it, just if I've looked at it. There is a certain thing you can do. I think you can untangle the circuit with cognitive plus emotional acknowledgement. And I guess I just want to speak to that because that's what has helped me. And sometimes when I hear people talking about sitting and seeing, I go well, I'm glad it works for them, but I need this other thing.
I'd be interested to hear some more about what it is that, even maybe to give an example of something that comes up and what that, how you describe it, cognitive.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily a fantasy that you get a story about these feelings and then you feel glad because you have this story now and you quote understood it so you can shelve it and drop it. That's one explanation. But in my own life, for instance, without being totally self-revealing, I don't feel like doing that, but say there was an issue I had that always upset me, in certain situations. And I was always aware of being upset. And I would look at it and I didn't condemn myself for it. It was just sort of upsetting. But it was only really dropped after I, talked about it with someone in therapy for quite a while. And I saw the connections between the situation, the upsettedness, the kind of situations when it occurred, my past, my present, boom. When I saw it in that kind of full dimension, then it did, in fact, drop away. I don't know if that says enough.
It seems to me like you almost have to get to a level where the attachment is no longer there somehow. That until we see to the point where we can let go of the attachment to it, and that's the emotional, that comes from the emotional hurt that it's put on us. Until we can see it so clearly that we're no longer, the defenses no longer come up about it, then we can't really drop it. And when we do see it so clearly that we're no longer threatened by it, that's where the emotional detachment comes from. And that's where we can drop it. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But I think there's a working up to that point.
Yeah.
To me, I often see it as like going through like windows, and it gets like smaller and smaller. I don't know. You're stepping through windows and you're looking behind you, and the windows frames are smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's a series until finally, And as you get further away from it, yeah, the emotional attachment is less.
Mm-hmm.
Something occurs to me about that kind of getting to a place of that something can fall away. Maybe this is something that is very central in one's life, that one's been doing all one's life, and maybe carrying a question about that all one's life, but not to the point where it can unravel and it can fall away. And it seems kind of almost miraculous that it can happen at all. And sometimes I have the feeling that in myself, there's a certain expectation or impatience about having some of these painful places be resolved. But when I look at it, sort of looking back on it, it seems quite remarkable that it does happen. It may take a long time. There may be a question that takes, it seems, years to actually come out and work itself out. And And so I wonder for myself whether that impatience at having something fall away that's been kind of a pain or troublesome, whether that impatience, whether it serves any purpose or, I don't know where else to go with that.
Something that comes up for me, Carol, is that when I'm in that situation of being impatient about the suffering that I can't seem to deal with, it's like there's no connection to what I'm dealing with in my everyday life, to somehow I don't see the connection to that suffering. And yet when there is some kind of resolution, where there is some kind of clear seeing and the defenses can drop and the hurt can be dropped, then I start seeing that it really is connected to everything else, that those hurts are really connected to everything else. and that it's not a matter of, it's really a matter of approaching what's right there to that starts to unravel the whole fabric of what's holding that hurt in place. Does that make sense? And it's so much easier to see from hindsight when once, well, not too long ago, I really came up against a very hurtful place, and somehow the defenses were able to drop, and there was a release there. And since then, I see more and more of how the rest of my hurt was connected to that hurt. And so I don't know exactly what I'm trying to get to.
And the release at the particular time of a specific hurt has also affected defensiveness about other hurts.
It has, yeah, and it's also allowed me to see kind of the source of that defensiveness in a way.
Which is what? What's the source of all this?
Well, maybe I guess I haven't made it a more general thing, but things started falling together, and I could see where certain aspects of my upbringing were kind of making me anticipate doing something wrong before I knew I was doing it wrong. And so I had a very uneasy feeling that all of a sudden something bad is going to happen. I'm going to be punished for something without really understanding that it's going to happen. And it caused me a lot of fear. I better watch myself. It seems okay, but there's this fear coming. And somehow I realized that it was because I'd been punished out of the blue before.
It seems like that there are two processes going on, and both are mental to be. It looks that way. I don't know whether it finds its way in this terminology. That when you have a problem, there are two processes that go on. One is mentally we try to solve it by arguing and thinking the answer, the response, or expectations on somebody to change something. That mental one, and the other mental process is just the other, which is not that what we are doing. Not solving mentally in that way is the other. I don't know how to put the words on that. The moment you are in the other, then you are still looking, and there is no problem. The moment you slip and solve it the other way, and mentally, then you have a problem.
But the other process is not completely a mental process. Right? One is a mental process, because all mental processes are accompanied with physical components.
Yeah.
But the other, of not trying to solve it, but just being there with it, is not, I wouldn't call it a mental process. Were you saying these are two mental processes?
Now that you mentioned that the other is not a mental process, that it makes sense because the one that we're trying to solve is a mental.
Yes.
And when it is not, then whatever word you use.
Yeah. This is a total process. Whatever. It's not the word. I guess the balance wrong. Got that.